What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It was another run to the college football playoff for Ohio State in 2020. We're going to look at their schedule for 2021 and give you a projected record based on that schedule. The 2020 schedule obviously was not a full schedule for the Buckeyes. They only played about half as many games as you would normally play in the regular season. But when we fast forward to 2021, and it's going to be back to a normal 12-game schedule unless something happens. And they're going to get to play Oregon, a team that they were supposed to play last year. This time they will get them at home. And we're going to look at this schedule, see exactly how tough it is, and see if this schedule is going to give them an opportunity to get it back to the college football playoff in 2021. So here is the schedule. It's interesting that they will open up on a Thursday night against Minnesota on the road. That's probably the first thing that jumps out to me. That, and then the fact that they play Penn State and Michigan back-to-back at the end of the year. That's interesting as well. Let's first, though, look at the games that they play outside of the division. So, of course, they're going to play all the teams in the Big Ten East, but these are the teams they'll play in the non-conference and out of the West. Oregon, Tulsa, and Akron. That's your three non-conference games. Oregon at home. Remember, they were supposed to go to Oregon last year. They got out of that one, but now they'll play them at home. An Oregon team that was very young last year, but they're very talented and had another great recruiting class this year. Tulsa at home. A Tulsa team that surprised a lot of people last year. They turned out to be a pretty good team. We'll see how they look in 2021. And then Akron, a game that Ohio State shouldn't have any real trouble with. Then you got out of the West, Minnesota on the road, Nebraska on the road, and Purdue. But really, when you look at this, I think they have a great lineup out of the West, because the teams you probably want to avoid, and it's early, so I haven't done all the evaluations that I do on these teams, but looking at it quickly, it looks to me like Iowa, Wisconsin, Northwestern, those are probably going to be the top three teams in the West. They avoid all three of those teams. Now, Nebraska is always interesting. They've got talent. They have potential, but they haven't been able to really tap into that potential lately. Minnesota is a team that had a great year a couple of years ago. We'll see how they bounce back this year. And both of those games are on the road, plus there's Purdue. So that's it. That's who they'll play out of the West. Again, I think this sets up really well for the Buckeyes to make another run potentially to the college football playoff. Let's go game by game now. They start with Minnesota, again, on a Thursday night. That could be a tricky game just because it's week one. You're going to have a new quarterback on the road. We assume there'll be fans this year, so that is an interesting game there. And then Oregon week two, so they don't get an easy game. There are no cupcake games for them to start off the year. They jump right into it with a Big Ten game, and then Oregon at home. Again, this is an Oregon team that should be pretty good this year, and I think that's going to be one of the bigger non-conference games really in the entire country. Looking forward to that one. Tulsa on September 18th. Like I said, we don't really know for sure what Tulsa is going to look like. It's a team that had a really good year last year. They didn't look great in the bowl game though, so that's a game you assume Ohio State should be able to take care of business in, and of course Akron, same thing. They should be able to win that game. That's your month of September, and then it's all Big Ten games from there. They start with Nebraska on October the 2nd. The game is on the road. Pretty tough place to play, but again, Nebraska just has not been really competitive the last few years, and I don't know that that's going to change, but perhaps it does. Perhaps Nebraska is a threat in the Big Ten West. This game's on the road. If that's the case, that could be a tricky game. Purdue at home, because it's at home, I don't think is too big of a concern. We'll have to keep an eye on that one on October the 9th. Then they get a bye week. Not exactly an ideal spot for the bye week between Purdue and Rutgers, but they'll play Rutgers on October 23rd on the road. Rutgers is a team that we saw last year is starting to improve. Greg Schiano did a really nice job with them in year one. What will they look like in year two? Of course, that's the big question there, and that game is on the road. Then on October the 30th, they'll play Michigan State at home. Michigan State really struggling right now. They appear to be a team that's going to be towards the bottom of the Big Ten again in 2021, plus the games at home, so I'm not too worried about that if I'm Ohio State. How about the game after that, though? November the 6th, on the road at Indiana. We saw last year Indiana, they've turned things around. Indiana is a threat in the Big Ten. They played Ohio State pretty tough last year. This year it's on the road. They got a lot of guys coming back. That is a very tricky game if you're Ohio State. I like where it is on the schedule. It's not early, so you're going to have time to break in the young quarterback. And also, it's not sandwiched in between two huge games. It's between Michigan State and Maryland, two home games. So I like where it's at on the schedule. But again, if I had to circle a game that I would say, oh, this could be a tricky game here, it's that Indiana game on November the 6th. Maryland after that on November 13th. The game is at home for Ohio State. And then the last two games will be big ones. They'll play Penn State on November the 20th. The game is at home for Ohio State. That's good news. Penn State was not very good last year, but I really think this Nittany Lion team is going to be better in 2021. They got a lot of guys coming back, some transfers. If you look at how they finished the year last year, they finished really strong. So I think this is going to be maybe a tougher game than you might expect, just looking back to last year. Good news for Ohio State is, again, this game is at home. That is the good news. And then the final game of the year will be against Michigan. Of course, the rivalry game there. And, Michigan hasn't really been competitive with Ohio State. They had, one game, I guess, in the last few years where they actually had a chance to win it. The game's on the road. That could be a test there. When you look at the road schedule, though, for Ohio State, it's Minnesota, Nebraska, Rutgers, Indiana, Michigan. I still go back to that Indiana game. I think that might be the biggest challenge on the road. But overall, when I look at this schedule, it's not too bad, especially when you look at who they play out of the West. They don't have any tough back-to-backs. The toughest back-to-backs are probably Minnesota and Oregon to start the year, and then maybe Penn State and Michigan. So I think this schedule absolutely sets up in a way to where Ohio State is once again going to be the favorite in the Big Ten East, and they're going to have a really good shot to make it back to the college football playoff. It was another undefeated regular season for Ohio State in 2020. We're going to project the record for 2021. This is not a prediction, not an official prediction. I want to make that clear. We're simply doing a projection based on the schedule, based on their odds to win each game. And we just kind of grouped the opponents together in different categories. Again, here is the schedule. 7-1 in 2020, but it was a 6-0 regular season, or 5-0 regular season for Ohio State. We're only going to be projecting the regular season. We're not going to look ahead to the potential Big Ten championship game or the college football playoff. Simply projecting what their regular season record could be in 2021. So this is a scale that we use. If the games are basically 50-50 games, we'll leave them in white, 41 to 59%. And then we have the red games under 10%. 10 to 25% will be in orange, 26 to 40% in yellow, 60 to 74 in purple, 75 to 90 in blue, and then the games where they will be I think more than a 90% chance to win, those will be in green. And when you look at Ohio State, they're going to have a new quarterback, some question marks on defense. So I don't know if this team is going to be an elite team, at least to start the year off. I think they have the players to where they could be an elite team late in the year, but I think there are a lot of games where they could potentially lose, whereas going into last year, it was like, well, it's gonna be a shock if they lose a game. I mean, they're just not gonna lose. This year, yeah, they're probably gonna be favored in every game, but there are some games on the schedule to where you think they could lose this game. So let's break it down by percentages here, and we start with those games that are above 90%. Only one. I have Akron here. I don't think they have any real issue with Akron. This should be an easy win. Shouldn't have to play the starters too long. There are some other games that you could potentially put in this category, but again, I like to be kind of conservative when I do this. Most of their games are going to be in this next category, between 75% and 90%. Games where they're going to be favored by double digits, probably a couple of touchdowns, maybe 17 points, something like that. Again, that's going to be the majority of this Ohio State schedule. And here you see all the blue. Minnesota on the road. Yeah, it's week one. Yeah, it's on the road. Yeah, they're going to have a new quarterback. But I'm not overly concerned about this game. I think Ohio State will still be a clear favorite. Now, this is closer to 75% than it is 90%. But I still think that it is a game that we should put in this category. On the other hand, Tulsa, that's a game that you'd probably put closer to 90%. I think you can even make an argument that one should be in the green. But Tulsa was a good team last year, so I'm going to again, kind of go conservative and put that one in this category. Nebraska on the road, another game where I think Ohio State will be favored by double digits. I would be surprised if they lost any of these games really in the blue. Of course, it's happened in the past, so you never know. But that, again, is a game that Ohio State should win. Purdue, same thing. They're playing them at home. Rutgers on the road. Michigan at home. These are all games that Ohio State should win in 2021. Games where they will be favored by a decent amount. Maryland, the same story. I know Maryland hit some strides last year, but I just don't really see that being too big of a challenge. And even Michigan at the end of the year, yes, it's a rivalry game. Yes, it's on the road, but let's be real here. Michigan has not beaten Ohio State in a long time, and there's really nothing to indicate that they're going to do that in 2021. So that's the majority of the schedule. Again, Ohio State has a very favorable schedule. They're going to be big favorites, I think double-digit favorites in 9 of their 12 games. That leaves Oregon, Indiana, and Penn State. So what do we do with these 3 games? I still think Ohio State will be favored in these 3 games, but I think it's closer, again, to that 60% mark. These will be games where I think Ohio State's going to be favored by 7 or 8 points, maybe closer to 10. It's hard to say right now. Oregon, this is a team with talent, but the game is at Ohio State. If you look at Oregon last year, I mean, they didn't look like a team that was real close to being able to compete with the elite teams in college football. I don't think they're super far away. But again, this is a game I think Ohio State is the clear favorite. Indiana played Ohio State really tough. The game is on the road. This, I think, will potentially be the toughest game on the schedule for Ohio State. But they're still going to be favored. They're still talent-wise way ahead of Indiana. Yes, they could lose this game. They could lose, I think, any of these games. But it would be an upset, and I think the Buckeyes will be favored again by about a touchdown. And same thing for Penn State. Now, I really expect Penn State to be better this year. If they're about as good as they were last year, then this game shouldn't be close. And Ohio State really we should bump this one up into that 75 to 90% category. But I'm anticipating Penn State turning it around a little bit. I think this will be a pretty good team next year. You look at how they finished the year last year. So these 3 games, again, will be the games where if they're going to lose, if they're going to slip up somewhere, it's probably going to be Oregon, Indiana, or Penn State. I would be surprised if they lost to anyone else. And so when we project the record, we average this out. The way I do it, I have a formula. If it's in the blue or the green, that's counted as a win. I don't even consider those games potential losses. Then we just average out the other games. And when you do that, when you got 3 games, and the number I use here is 60%, when you have 3 games where you're going to be favored but not by a lot, chances are you're going to slip up and lose one of those games. I'm not predicting that to happen. I'm just saying that's what the odds would tell you. So yes, 1 loss for Ohio State. Their projected record, 11-1 in 2001. I don't think they do any worse than that. To me, that's probably about as worst case scenario, because I think it's very possible this team could once again go 12-0. But it's going to be, in my opinion, 11-1 or 12-0. That will be the record. One of those 2 records is what it's going to be for Ohio State in 2021. Do you guys agree? What do you think about this? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below.